The topic of tonight's talk is dreams and destiny, experiences and dreams of an early Sufi couple. In our spiritual quest, we are often confronted with the following question: who is it in us who is walking on the path? When we close our eyes in meditation and allow the shadows of our discursive, variegated, fragmented reality to dissipate, where do we go? And what is it in us which goes? When we listen to the voice of the inner master, when we set aside our separate identities and wills, and allow our inner ears to listen and our inner eyes to see, who is it that perceives? What in us takes notice? And whom do we obey? When we wake up in the morning or in the middle of the night, and our whole entity, body, soul, emotions, is shaking with the notion of some tremendous truth which was conveyed to us in our dreams. When we wake up and deep waves of remorse sweep through our souls due to some images which came from our depths and made us realize something essential about our unlived lives, about our failed efforts, about our true passions, about our most intimate hopes and fears. What is it in us which becomes deadly attentive and awakened? What is it in us which reveals itself to us, breaking through the haziness and mists of doubt, indecision, laziness, confusion, preconceived ideas, and procrastinations? When we are thrown into the dark nights of the soul, when we feel abandoned and rejected, forgotten and failing, when all our aspirations peter out and wane into wilderness and dead ends, what is it in us which rises up once more, like the phoenix out of the ashes, and against all odds, in the face of all failures and frustrations, soars up again, even higher, even freer than before? There is a knowledge in us which does not belong to the realm of the conscious mind or the sensory perceptions, and which does not belong to the realm of the ego or the personality. It is this unknowable knowledge which, when we allow it to shine on us, will lift us, will guide us, and will shape our lives, if only we allow it to take its course patiently, if only we persevere until it unfolds at the right time and at the right place. This is the knowledge of our inner destiny, the knowledge of our true destination. Ibn Arabi, the 13th century Andalusian mystic, wrote, God deposited within man knowledge of all things, then prevented him from perceiving what he had deposited within him. This is one of the divine mysteries which reason denies and considers totally impossible. The nearness of this mystery to those ignorant of it is like God's nearness to his servant, as mentioned in his words. We are nearer to him than you, but you do not see. This is Surah 56 from the Quran, verse 85. And his words were nearer to him than his jugular vein. 50:16. In spite of this nearness, Ibn Arabi goes on to say, the person does not perceive and does not know. No one knows what is within himself until it is unveiled to him instant by instant. Access to this secret, sacred knowledge is rare and not easy to get by. And when it comes, it is always bestowed upon us as grace, like the blessed rain that falls on us from above. This is for the simple reason. Access to such knowledge, when the time is not right, when we are not yet ready, would entail one of two things. Either a tremendous risk of inflation and self-delusion, or a collapse of the defense mechanism of the psyche. This is important. What is given us through the grace of the teacher and the path is the growing capacity to trust that this unknowable knowledge is shaping the inner patterns of our lives, the patterns which move through light and dark towards our inner destination. We learn to have faith that in time, out of these patterns, which seem often chaotic and meaningless, the direction and the purpose of our unique destiny will unfold with clarity and certitude. The direction which is destined for us and us alone. Meanwhile, we learn to wait. A young woman came to see Mrs. Tweedy one day. She has been going through several years of intense emotional and practical hardships. But nothing of her problems was spoken about. She did not have an individual session with Tweedy. She did not even meditate. Just sat there with the rest of us. That night, she had a vision. So she insisted, a vision rather than a dream. In her vision, a gentle giant came into the room where she was sleeping, gently lifted her head off the pillow, and placed beneath it a torch and a book. The young woman woke up feeling that something valuable was given to her through a link with her mother's teacher, some sort of promise for guidance and protection. To trust our destiny, and by the same token to trust our dreams, is one of the great trials of the path, since most of the time we grope in a foggy, misty existence. We cannot see where we are going, and the choices we make are only seemingly free. On the face of it, the teacher is not offering us much help in clarifying for us our destiny and destination. On the contrary, we know only too well that the teacher will do anything he or she can in order to bewilder us, to contradict himself, to work against our loftiest images and ideas, to put to question our value system, and so on. Many a time we are driven to despair in front of these assaults against all that seems rational, conventional, predictable, and even natural. Yet ultimately, we learn to listen to the teacher's hidden, unspoken guidance, to the hint, to the casual remarks in which some valuable directions may be disguised, to meaningful coincidences, to the voice of our intuition, to our dreams and experiences. Our inner faculties become finer and finer with time and experience. But first, we have to trust the path and to doubt our own notions and preconceived ideas. In his book, Dynamics of the Self, which is, to my mind, one of the finest elaborations on Jung's ideas, Gerhard Adler writes, I quote freely because he too quotes from Jung, so it's like me quoting Adler quoting Jung. So Adler says that Jung, in the integration of the personality, one of the chapters in the collective work, Jung has talked about a consciousness in the unconscious, a center of transcendental consciousness, these are Jung's idioms, which does not belong to the ego. This transcendental unconscious consciousness, look at the paradox, has both a continuous and a purposive existence. It is there for a purpose. Now note the similarity between these statements of two modern psychiatrists and the unknowable knowledge of Ibn Arabi quoted above. Adler goes on to quote from Jung's On the Nature of the Psyche, where Jung is putting forward the idea of the unconscious as a multiple consciousness with its own luminosity. The ego consciousness is surrounded by a multitude of these luminosities, scintillae, which are luminous particles, which sometimes emerge as images in dreams and visual fantasies. The alchemist of past time, according to Jung, called these luminosities seeds of light in the chaos. And also, and this is important, the seed plot of a world to come. To quote Adler more precisely, the totality of these scintillae, sparks or luminous particles, produce a light which becomes visible to the observing conscious mind as a consciousness in the unconscious, as a consciousness in the unconscious. Thus, when one analyzes dreams, one finds frequently a process of realization taking place in the unconscious, which is full of inner consistency, coherence, and intelligence. This I have called, Adler says, the logos of the unconscious. So far, Adler and Jung. In many instances, life becomes the teacher. Life, in fact, is always the teacher, because our outer circumstances, as well as our inner experiences, are molded by what Adler has called the logos of the unconscious, whether we realize it or not. And thus, in our lives, possibilities arise and possibilities fall away. We find something, then we lose it. Then we find again, only to become lost in what we have found. And in the previous talk, The Niche of Light, I talked about the significance of finding, being found in the Sufi tradition. On the surface, we have to live our lives as people do in the marketplace. There are laws of the market. There are etiquettes and norms of behavior. Yet all along, something else is taking place. We concurrently live also in the level of this consciousness of the unconscious, or as we might say, at the level of the mantra, the level of timelessness, where the whole comes through in the ineffable pause between the in-breath and the out-breath, or the infinitesimal gap between one breath and another. This too is very confusing to the mind. Consciously, I mean at will, we cannot do it. It is not possible for us to reach the level of the mantra at will. This level cannot be conceived. Even less possible is it to decide at will to practice something like solitude in the crowd. On the level of discourse, on the level of words, living concurrently on two levels of existence does not make much sense. So it is not a very good idea to try and make sense of it. But in practice, it works. As I've said, our inner faculties become finer and finer. If we meditate, they do. Our values change with practice and with the exposure to the right kind of energy. Alone we cannot do it. And at the level of the mind, it doesn't make sense. At the beginning, however, one has to tolerate the mental confusion and the vicissitudes of life. And one has to trust the dreams. In lovely, down-to-earth images, Rumi tells the story of the childhood friends. Joseph, now a formidable and mighty prince, second only to Pharaoh, the great king of Egypt, meets with a childhood friend. A friend from his remote childhood days in the land of Canaan, when he was the adored, idealized son of his father Jacob, where big dreams of great future were revealed to him, and where, by the somewhat naive yet honest interpretation of these dreams, he incurred the hate and envy of his brothers. So this is Rumi now. A close childhood friend once came to visit Joseph. They had shared the secrets that children tell each other when they are lying on the pillows at night before they go to sleep. These two were completely truthful with each other. The friend asked, "What was it like when you realized you brothers were jealous and what they planned to do?" "I felt like a lion with a chain around its neck, not degraded by the chain and not complaining, but just waiting for my power to be recognized." "How about down in the well and in prison? How was it then?" "Like the moon when it's getting smaller, yet knowing the fullness to come. Like a seed pearl ground in the mortar for medicine that knows it will be the light in a human eye. Like a wheat grain that breaks open in the ground, then grows, then gets harvested, then crushed in the mill for flour, then baked, then crushed again between teeth to become a person's deepest understanding, lost in love. like the songs the planters sing the night after they sow the seed. No one can surpass Rumi in the way he describes so simply and so movingly the inner certitude and strength which come in the bottom of the pit from the clear dream vision of one's destiny, from the inner certitude in the divine origin of the dreams, those messengers from the so-called logos of the unconscious. At the same time, one notices with amazement the similarity between this last image which Rumi puts in Joseph's mouth, like the songs the planters sing the night after they sow the seed, and the above quoted analogy of the alchemists who saw the luminous particles of the unconscious as seed plot of a world to come. Our destiny is encapsulated like seeds in the dark, hidden luminosity of the unconscious. An association comes to mind, a quotation from the Daughter of Fire. In the evening, Tweedy writes, he told us the story from the Mahabharata. Arjuna lived in disguise as a eunuch in the king's court. He was teaching the ladies to sing and to play flute. "Oh, Arjuna," said Draupadi, "what are you doing in disguise, doing nothing? Look at your brother, at his deeds. He is so strong, so powerful." "Oh, Draupadi," said Arjuna, "yes, I am in disguise, but soon the time will come, is coming now, when you will not recognize me any longer, and you shall see how strong I am again." And Tweedy writes, I got the meaning. It flashed into my mind. You see me like this, unwell, weak. I am in disguise. Soon you will see the real me. Soon you will see my power. The story of Joseph, as told in the Bible and as perceived by Rumi, can be pondered at length. In the eyes of the Sufis, Joseph symbolizes the beauty of the beloved. It is told that when Joseph, as a slave in Egypt, was walking to the market, the Egyptian women who were preparing vegetables for supper cut the fingers and did not even feel the pain, so enraptured they were in his beauty. The Quran has this story in a slightly different version. I quote, "Certain women that were in the city said, the governor's wife has been soliciting her page. He smote her heart with love. We see her in manifest error." When she heard the sly whispers, she sent to them and made ready for them a meal. Then she gave to each one of them a knife. "Come forth, attend to them," she said to Joseph. And when they saw him, they so admired him that they cut their hands, saying, "God save us, this is no mortal. He is no other but a noble angel." Elaborating on this passage, Hujwiri, the 11th century Sufi author, writes in his Kashf al-Mahjub, which means the unveiling of the veiled. He writes, "The true Sufi is he that leaves impurity behind. Thus, human nature prevailed in the women of Egypt as they gazed, enraptured, on the wondrous beauty of Joseph. But afterwards, the preponderance was reversed, until at last they beheld him with their human nature annihilated, and cried, "This is no mortal." They made him their object and gave expression to their own state. Now we would say, to put it in modern terminology, that the Egyptian women projected the beauty of their own souls onto Joseph and became enraptured with their own beauty embodied in the image of Joseph. This inner beauty too belongs to the hidden, often unconscious luminosity of the higher self. A woman in our group had the following dream, and I read verbatim. I am sitting at the back of an orchestra, observing, not taking part in the playing, but still in it. I am watching Celia. I am there with a few other young flute-playing females. We are all there waiting for Celia to join us after the concert, so that we could congratulate her on her playing. But Celia does not come. So I go by myself downstairs to a room on an old manor-style house, looking for Celia. It is an old-fashioned, grand room with an institutional feel about it, but there is no one there. All the same, I know that Celia has been there, in front of two elderly gentlemen who had offered her great rewards if she produced her very best at the concert. Now she had done this and came to claim her just reward. But they now said that although it had been excellent, it wasn't worth anything really. So she had gone away. The dreamer is a flute player herself. In her youth, she had studied to play the flute professionally, and subsequently began a very promising career as a flute player in several orchestras. Some of her teachers, mainly male, were highly prominent performers and inspiring teachers. She then married a musician, gave birth to 2 children, and gave up her musical career as a performer, although she took up teaching flute. Being an almost natural meditator, she began taking an interest in meditation and in the inner work which comes with it. Working on her dreams, frustrations, states of mind, relationships, it has gradually become clear to her that her attitude to the professional aspect of her playing has been very ambivalent from the start. The great heroes of her youth, her teachers, and the excellent performers with whom she had played in the orchestra, she has viewed them with a mixture of admiration and disapproval. She admired the brilliancy and had occasionally described it in similar terms to those in which she described Celia in the dream. But at the same time, she also accused them of being on a huge ego trip. It has also become clear to her that in her attitude towards herself and perhaps also towards her children. She has been identifying with the social and family norms according to which professional and educated women have been frowned upon. Men are usually the breadwinners, women the child raisers. Motherhood and wifehood does not go with professional playing, or any career for that matter. But above and beyond all these, she has discovered the repressed pain of not pursuing her own musical development. For her, this has become related to the pain of longing to a lost paradise. Now, Celia, who is indeed a professional flute player and also a wife and a mother, is dreamt of as giving an outstanding performance of a most difficult solo. She is illuminated by the dazzling music she produces. Everyone is stunned at the brilliance of it. No doubt, Celia is a shadow figure for the dreamer. She lives out for the dreamer what she had not lived herself. But this is the dreamer's own brilliancy and excellence which is projected onto Celia, as we saw in the story of Joseph. There is something angelic, something supernatural in the way Celia's performance is perceived by everyone in the dream, all different parts of the dreamer's psyche. It is brilliant, without blemish. The brilliancy and almost superhuman quality projected onto Celia comes from that luminous center which contains more than the shadow. It is rather the higher self, the luminosity of the unconscious, the essence. At long last, it has manifested itself to the dreamer in images which come from the logos of the unconscious, to use Adler's term. And through these images, she can now come into contact with her own brilliancy, her own strengths, her true aspirations, purified from the contamination of the superimposed, moralistic, limiting concept of all this is nothing but an ego trip. Not everyone is a Joseph. Not everyone has got from the age of 17 these remarkable dreams about the future. Not everyone can have from the beginning this trust in the dreams. So sometimes it is only the outcome of a long and arduous work to be able to trust the dream, to trust the luminosity of the unconscious. Now, this brilliancy in the dream is embodied in a woman, not in the male figures she had often dreamt about. And this is of utter importance for the dreamer. The feminine quality of the experience is emphasized by the group of women, all young flute players. In the language of the quotation from Jung via Adler, all luminous particles scintillate, emanating from the unconscious, who are waiting for Celia, their alter ego, in order to share with her the exuberance of her performance. Yet something goes wrong. Celia does not come. The dreamer, following her intuition, separates herself from the somewhat undifferentiated group of women. Namely, she is now walking in the path of her own individuation, of her own path. She has to go by herself downstairs. And she climbs down the staircase into the old formal hall, which has, and I quote, an institutional feel about it. And there, in the realm of the impersonal, authoritative male figures, who censor and clip down her own wings, her own exuberance and buoyancy, there is where she knows she'll find out what has happened to Celia. And she does. Celia has been slighted by the judges, the two anonymous elderly male figures that come from her strict collective past. They are not willing to grant her their approval in spite of her outstanding achievement. And the dreamer knows she will have to go now her own way, alone, like Celia in the dream. She will have to rely now on her own standards, her own self-appraisal, her own genuine aspirations, her own faith in her destiny, because she cannot ignore anymore the beauty of her own music. In spite of, or thanks to, the pain, grief, disappointment, and loneliness, because her performance on the stage of life has not been acknowledged by the patriarchal collective, which she had integrated and with which she had identified to her own detriment. In spite of this, a sobering awakening is taking place in the psyche, because the divine beauty of the higher self has shown itself to her in a female form, her form. More work has to be done, but now the road is freer. Through the images of her dream, a contact has been made with her inner destiny. Now, this is the end of the first part of tonight's talk. Let's sit a couple of minutes in silence, and then if there are any questions or anyone wants to say anything. In the second half of the 9th century, a Muslim seeker went in search of inner knowledge. And luckily, he has left an autobiographical record of his years of search. And this record has been preserved for us through the centuries and through the distance. Abu Abdullah Muhammad ibn Ali al-Hakim at-Tirmidhi has left a document which is, to the best of my knowledge, the first autobiography written, or at least preserved, in the Sufi tradition. We don't know of any autobiography from before that one. Now, the study of this autobiography, as well as the study of all the other writings of Al-Hakim at-Tirmidhi, who has left a vast literary heritage, is of very great importance for the understanding of the formative years of the Sufi tradition as it unfolded historically within Islam. Tonight, however, it is the experiences and dreams which have been recorded in this remarkable document that I would like to focus on. In his autobiography, which is entitled The Beginning of My Journey, actually, literally it means the beginning of my affair or my business, Al-Hakim at-Tirmidhi describes key events in his life, dreams, mystical experiences, and also, and this is absolutely unique, he describes his extraordinarily close relationship with his wife, whose name, unfortunately, he does not mention. Perhaps, in order to give her a name, we may call her simply Abdallah, the mother of Abdallah, in the same way that he is called Abu Abdallah, the father of Abdallah. Because it has always been the custom in the Orient to refer to parents by the name of the eldest son. So let's call her Abdallah. The inner link between Al-Tirmidhi and his wife was so strong that she used to dream for him, teaching dreams. In fact, most of the dreams recorded in his autobiography are his wife's dreams for him. However, the dreams also make it clear that she is not just a mediumistic messenger for him. The dreams reflect also her own inner development, and the record ends up with her own mystical experiences, which were given to her alone. In other words, this is a document which describes the inner journey through dreams and experiences of a mystical couple, united in marriage as well as in the spiritual path, whose inner and outer life is closely knit together, and who, at the same time, are clearly distinguished as two separate human beings from one another. In this respect, I think, it is not only a rare document, but also a very rare and very precious human experience. At-Tirmidhi tells us how he had gone on a pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca, and how there, in a sacred space within the Kaaba, the gates of prayer were opened for him, and his heart grasped the meaning of true repentance and true abstention. This was the beginning of his spiritual awakening. Yet for a long, long time to come, perhaps for years, we are not clear about the dates, he was searching, praying, practicing, while on his own, with no teacher, without any companions. I quote, "The love of solitude came into my heart. I would go out into the wilderness and wander about in the ruins and graveyards around my town. This was my practice, and I kept it diligently. I was looking for true companions who would support me in this, but it was difficult for me to find any. So I took refuge in ruins and in solitary places. One day," he goes on to tell us, "while in this state, I saw, as if in a dream, the vision of the messenger of God, peace be on him. He entered the great mosque of our town, and I followed in his footsteps. He walked until he entered the eminent stall, the section in the mosque reserved for the dignitaries, and I walked behind him, very close to him, almost cleaving to his back, stepping on his very footsteps. Then he climbed up the pulpit, and again I followed every step of his until he stood upright on the uppermost rung. Then he sat down on that top rung, and I sat down at his feet, on the rung beneath him, my right side facing his face, my face facing the gates which opened to the market, and my left facing the people in the mosque. When I woke up, I was in this position." Now this is the first auspicious dream which At-Tirmidhi records, and it conveys both the deep place in his collective unconscious from where the dream comes, the higher self represented by none other than the Prophet Muhammad himself, as well as the personal, uncompromising stamina of his spiritual quest. Nothing will come between him and the Prophet. He will follow in his footsteps until the last rung but one. He will be stepping on the Prophet's very footsteps, literally. It is worthwhile noting that the period prior to this dream is described by Tirmidhi as a very intense period in terms of his ascetic and devotional practices, his determination, but also his aloneness and the state of bewilderment that he is in. He knows from within that what he is searching for is beyond the conventional religious life of the Muslim community to which he belongs, because he had already been shown a glimpse of true repentance and true abstention. But he needs someone to validate it from without, to articulate it for him. The second dream, which he records, speaks for itself. He writes, "A short time after this, while praying one night, I was overtaken by deep tiredness, and as I put my head on the prayer rug, I saw a huge and empty space, a wilderness unfamiliar to me. I saw a huge and covered seat and a veiled canopy. I cannot describe the covers or the veils. And as if it was conveyed to me, this will take you to your Lord. I entered through the veils, and I saw neither a person nor a form. But as I entered through the veils, a great sense of awe descended upon me. And in my dream, I knew without doubt that I was standing in front of him. Soon enough, I saw myself outside the veils, standing by the outer veil, exclaiming, 'He has released me!' And my breath calmed down after the great fear." So far the dream. On the one hand, one does not feel like trying to elaborate on this dream. It really speaks for itself. But on the other hand, one senses here an expansion and a deepening, not only of the inner personal experience, which brings At-Tirmidhi in the most numinous prophetic way into direct contact with none other but his Lord. Bearing in mind the intensity of the experience, one can only marvel at the succinct, minimalistic way in which it is written down. It seems to have been too overwhelming for words, and yet it was diligently recorded. But alongside the depth of the personal experience, the dream shows also a process of expansion and deepening that takes place in the collective level of the experience. Here, Al-Tirmidhi is linked through the lofty images of his dream with a very ancient Oriental tradition from time immemorial of the Lord who sits upon the throne. This archetypal image is definitely much more ancient than Islam, much more ancient than Judaism, but the strongest impression of this image upon the collective consciousness of our Western tradition has stemmed, no doubt, from ancient Jewish mystical tradition. It is very intriguing to note, therefore, that this Jewish link is somehow addressed in legends on Al-Hakim at-Tirmidhi told in Sufi circles in later generations. Legends to which I shall have to come back, insha'Allah, some other time. Al-Tirmidhi continues his account. I kept walking in the path of self-control, avoiding pleasures, keeping to my solitude at home, avoiding the company of fellow men, practicing prolonged inward prayers and meditations. And things were revealed to me one by one. I found in my heart strength and alertness, but I was still searching for someone to help me. A group of us used to have nocturnal meetings. We would talk and practice dhikr and pray and beseech till dawn. Then afflictions and sorrows befell me by way of slanders and false accusations. Many were the slanderers, but this didn't seem important in my eyes. So-called religious scholars tried to attack me by charging me with heresy and innovation, and by speaking ill of me. But I kept to my path, day and night, persistently. Then the hardships increased. The slanderers put charges against me in front of the governor of Balkh, and he appointed someone to investigate the whole affair. I was accused of talking about love, of corrupting people, of innovating, of claiming prophecy, of saying things that had never crossed my mind. And so I was brought to Balkh and was ordered by the governor to refrain from talking about love. It is obvious that at this stage, at-Tirmidhi's spiritual attainments have become manifest. Perhaps through the nocturnal meetings with his companions, his experiences, dreams, and practices have become known. People have become inspired by him, no doubt, and by his talks about the path of love. But rumors of his dreams and of his teaching spread around and frightened the political and the religious men of power. There's nothing new about this. Mystics have often been accused of subversiveness, of corrupting the hearts and souls of decent men and women, of claiming prophecy, and so on. But he goes on persistently, keeping to his practices day and night. And I must confess that for me, in difficult times of my life, these words that he uses in the Arabic, du'uban, persistently, became a kind of mantra. It's possible. Now all this, at-Tirmidhi goes on to tell us, was from God, blessed be his name, in order to purify me. For sorrows purify the heart. I remembered what David, peace be on him, had said, O Lord, you command that I purify my body with fasts and prayers. With what shall I purify my heart? God answered, with sorrows and afflictions, O David. And indeed, sorrows followed one another in succession. But I learned to accept all these, and I became humble and obedient, and the sweetness of this humility and humbleness reached my heart. I will come now to Abdallah's dreams, his wife. In the meantime, he writes, my wife told me, I saw in a dream, as if standing in mid-air, outside the house, on the path, an image of an old man, curly-haired, wearing white clothes, on his feet sandals, and he was calling to me from the air. In the vision, I was standing in front of him. Where is your husband? I said, he has gone. He said, tell him, the prince commands you to act justly. And he disappeared. This is the first recorded dream which she had dreamt for him. And it is clearly a teaching dream. His position among his companions, in spite of the harassments, has become prominent. People gather in front of his door and beseech him to sit in front of them. Now this is the Sufi expression for becoming a guide to the wayfarers on the path. In the Sufi tradition, this is one of the most difficult stages on the path. Many a sheikh, so the tradition tells us, has forfeited his spiritual attainments because the position of leadership has inflated his ego. And we come to what you said before. Now, sitting in front of people is considered a great test and can never be practiced without an ijaza, a permission from one's superiors. Al-Tirmidhi, however, does not seem to have a teacher in the flesh, and yet he has been prepared for sitting in front of people. He is receiving a very clear teaching from the divine figure which appears to his wife in her dream. The description of this figure, an old man with white curly hair, wearing white, is the archetypal description of Khidr, the teacher of divine knowledge, who come to the appointed ones who do not have a teacher in the flesh. A similar figure appears also in Abdallah's second dream. Al-Hakim al-Tirmidhi writes, now my wife kept dreaming about me, dream after dream, always at dawn. It was as if she, or the dreams, were messengers for me. There was no need for interpretation, because the meaning was clear. And this was one of her dreams. I saw a big pool in a place unknown to me. The water in the pool was as pure as spring water. On the surface of the pool there appeared bunches of grapes, clear white grapes. Now I and my two sisters were sitting by the pool, picking up grapes from these bunches and eating them, while our legs were dangling over the pool, upon the surface of the water, not immersed in the water, only touching it. I said to my younger sister, here we are, as you see, eating from these grapes, but who has given them to us? And lo, a man came towards us, curly-haired, wearing a white turban on his head, his hair loose behind his turban, his clothes white. He said to me, who is the owner of a pool such as this, and of grapes such as these? And he took me by the hand raised me and said to me at a distance from my sisters, "Tell Muhammad ibn Ali to read this verse. We shall set up just scales on the day of resurrection, so that no man shall in the least be wrong." This is chapter 21, verse 47 from the Quran. On these scales, neither flour is weighed, nor bread, but the speech of this will be weighed. And he pointed to his tongue. And it will be weighed with these, and he pointed to his hands and legs. You do not know that excess of speech is as intoxicating as the drinking of wine. I said, "Please, would you tell me who you are?" He said, "I'm one of the angels. We roam the earth, and our abode is in Jerusalem." Then I saw in his right hand a bunch of young green myrtle branches, and in his other hand 2 branches of fragrant herbs. While he was walking to me, he was holding them in his hands. And then he said, "We roam the earth, and we call on the worshippers. We place these fragrant herbs on the hearts of the worshippers, so that by them they could carry out acts of worship. And this myrtle we place upon the hearts of the just and those who possess certitude, so that by them they could distinguish what is just. These herbs in summer look like this, but the myrtle is evergreen. It never changes, neither in summer nor in winter. Tell Muhammad ibn Ali, is it not your wish that you could have these too?" And he pointed to the myrtle and the herbs. Then he said, "God can raise the piety of the pious to such a stage that they will need no piety. Yet he had commanded piety to them, so that they should learn to know it. Tell him, purify your house." I said, "I have small children, and I cannot make my house pure completely." He said, "I do not mean of urine. What I mean is this," and he pointed to his tongue. I said, "And why don't you tell him so yourself?" He said, "What he does is neither a grave sin nor a minor sin. Yet in the eyes of people it is a minor sin, and for him this is a grave one. Why should he commit it?" Then he moved the hand which was holding the myrtle and said, "Because this is as yet far from him." Then he plucked out of the bunch which he was holding some of the myrtle and handed them to me. I said, "Shall I keep it for myself, or shall I give it to him?" He laughed, and his teeth shone like pearls. He said, "This is for you. And as for these which I am holding, I myself shall take them to him. This is between the two of you, because you are both together at the same place. Tell him, this is my last counsel to him. Peace be with you." Then he added, "May God bestow on you, O sisters, green meadows, not because of your fasts and prayers, but because of the purity of your hearts." I said to him, "Why don't you say it in front of my sisters?" He said, "They are not like you, nor are they your equal." Then he said, "Peace be with you," and went away. I woke up. Now, It is not my intention here to try and interpret the rich imagery and the profound teachings, most of them, by the way, elaborated indirectly by Al-Hakim al-Tirmidhi himself in some of his other non-personal writings. But I would only like to point out that here, as in the previous dream, there are allusions to ancient traditions and ancient teachings. The myrtle, for instance, is an ancient symbol for the righteous, the tzaddik, the evergreen man, hence for Khidr, and for the ever-living, ever-fresh, evergreen teaching. In the Bible, in the book of Zechariah, chapter 1, verses 8 to 11, the prophet is shown a vision which is in many ways reminiscent of Abdallah's dream images, although we should say the other way around. Her dream is very reminiscent of Zechariah prophecy. And I would like to read these verses from Zechariah. I saw by night, and behold a man riding upon a red horse, and he stood among the myrtle trees that were in the bottom. Then I said, O my Lord, what are these? And the angel that talked with me said unto me, I will show you what these be. And the man that stood among the myrtle trees answered and said, These are they whom the Lord has sent to walk to and fro through the earth. And they answered the angel of the Lord that stood among the myrtle trees and said, We have walked to and fro through the earth, and behold, all the earth sitteth still and is at rest. Now, a more in-depth contemplation of the esoteric teaching behind these verses and behind the dream is not possible right now. But it is really connected with your question, Janet, of the purposeful whole, and those angels or divinities which are appointed on protecting or watching over and transmitting the teaching. And they stand between the myrtle, because this is the evergreen. So it's the many allusions to very ancient traditions here that has to do with the maintenance of the worlds and how the divine teaching is transmitted. Now the Arabic and the Aramaic word for myrtle means healing. The fragrant herbs are also for healing, but in an inferior or rather temporary way, because as the holy man in the dream says, in summer they are like this, namely withered, and in winter they are green. And they are given to the worshipper, who is an inferior spiritual station compared with the just, and he who has attained certitude. And this one is linked with a myrtle. Now Abu Abdallah is told to purify himself. He has to learn to weigh his words and his actions very carefully now, because the teaching that is going to be transmitted through him is transcendental and divine. The dream is a profound initiatory and teaching dream, but it is also a dream of blessing and good tidings. The recipients of the blessings are Abdallah and her sisters, not because, as the man says in the dream, not because of the devotional acts, but because of the purity of the hearts. Yet the recipient of the good tidings is Abdallah alone, and she is distinguished from her sisters and is told in very clear words that she and her husband are both together in the same place. And she too is given from the myrtle branches. Now through the dream, they have both become inwardly prepared for the next phase of the unfolding destiny. So it's fascinating to see that all the teaching is done in the dreams. There's hardly any teaching outside. The next stage is inaugurated by a dream in which Abdallah is shown the process of spiritual transformation which is going to take place through her husband's teaching, both in himself and also in the world around him. The dream also points to her own deep involvement with this process, in which she becomes, or pledges to become, the custodian and protector of her husband's work. Without her, his mission cannot be completed. Here is the dream. In her dream, she was in the open hall of our house. There's a courtyard. There were several couches there, upholstered with brocade, and one of the couches stood next to the family mosque. She said, "I saw a tree growing by the side of this couch, facing the mosque. It grew up to a man's height, and it looked very dry, like withered piece of wood. It had branches similar to a palm tree, but the branches were all dry, like wooden pegs or filings. Now, from the bottom of the trunk, new branches emerged, about 5 or 6, and they were all green and moist. When these branches reached the middle of the dry tree, it started stretching and extending upwards to about 3 times a man's height, and so did the branches too. Then from amidst the branches there appeared bunches of grapes. I heard myself saying, 'This tree is mine. No one from here to the other end of the world has a tree like this.' I came closer to the tree, and I heard a voice coming from around it, although I could see no one there. I looked at the trunk, and I saw that it had grown out of a rock, a big rock. By the side of this rock, I saw another big rock, which had a hollow, like a pool. From the trunk of the tree, a brook emerged, and its water, pure water, flowed to the hollow of the rock and gathered there. Again, I heard a voice calling me from the bottom of the tree. 'Can you make a pledge to protect this tree so that no hand would touch it? Then this tree is yours. Its roots have stood in sand and soil. Many hands have touched it, and its fruit became worthless, then rotted and dried up. But now we have placed the rock around it, and we have nominated a bird over it to watch over the fruit of this tree. Look." I looked, and I saw a green bird, the size of a pigeon. It perched on one of the branches, not on the green, moist ones which grew from the bottom of the trunk, but on one of the dry branches. The bird hopped upwards, climbing from branch to branch, and whenever it perched on a dry branch, one of those which looked like dry pegs, it became green and moist, and bunches of grapes hung down from it. The voice said, "If you protect this tree faithfully, the bird will reach the top of the tree, and the whole tree will become green. Otherwise, the bird will stay here, in the middle." And I said, "I will. Yes, indeed, I will protect it." and there was no one there to be seen. The bird flew to the top of the tree, branch after branch, and the whole tree became green. And when it reached the top of the tree, I exclaimed with amazement, La ilaha illallah. Where are all these people? Can't they see the tree and come nearer? And the bird answered from the top of the tree, La ilaha illallah. I wished to pick up one tender grape from the tree, but a voice said to me, No, not until it has ripened. And I woke up. Now, indeed, this dream does not need any interpretation. The images in this dream, too, are ancient and highly archetypal. There is a sense of magic in the wondrous transformation which takes place in front of Abdallah's eyes. For her, though, who has a complete and utter faith in her husband's spiritual mission and inner destiny, the dream, her dream, from her own depths, speaks with prophetic truth. This prophetic truth comes from her logos of the unconscious. Now, information about Sufi women does not exist in abundance. And so here we have a unique record about this loyal, sincere, prophetic woman whose dreams have been carefully and lovingly recorded by her husband. This unnamed woman from Central Asia, more than 1100 years ago, has awakened through her deep empathy with her husband's destiny to her own inner search. Al-Hakim at-Tirmidhi's autobiography ends, in fact, with the story of Abdallah's own spiritual evolvement. She dreams, for instance, that she saw herself and her husband sleeping together in the same bed. The Prophet Muhammad then came and lay down with them. In another dream, which was meant only for her, she saw the Prophet Muhammad enter the house. She wanted to kiss his feet, but he wouldn't allow it. He gave me his hand, she told her husband, and I kissed it. I did not know what to ask of him. One of my eyes had been badly inflamed, so I said, Messenger of God, one of my eyes has been infected by inflammation. He said, in this case, cover it with your hand and say, La ilaha illallah, the one without partner, his is the kingdom and his is the praise. He revives and he kills. He holds the good in his hand. He is the omnipotent one. I woke up, she said, and since then, whenever anything befalls me, I repeat these words and the obstacle is removed. And these now are the final passages of Al-Hakim at-Tirmidhi's autobiography, and they are dedicated wholly to her. He writes, after these dreams, she felt an urge to search for truth herself. The first experience that she had, which confirmed the veracity of her dreams, was this. While she was sitting one day in the garden, 5 or 6 days after she had seen this last dream, the following phrases descended upon her heart. The light and guide of all things, You are He whose light pierces all darkness. She said, I felt as if something penetrated my chest, circled my heart and enveloped it. It filled my chest up to the throat, and I almost choked from its fullness. Heat spread through my cavity, the cavity of my body. My heart was on flame, and all the sacred names appeared to me in their glory. Anything upon which my eyes fell, on the earth or in the sky, anyone whom I looked at, I saw as I have never seen before, because of the beauty and joy and sweetness. Then a verse in Persian descended upon my heart. We have given you one thing. Again, I was filled with joy, elation, and great energy. And the next day, she said, another verse descended on my heart. We have given you three things: our glory, our might, and our beauty. Then she said, I saw this glow behind me, and it stayed above my head as if in a dream. And in this glowing light, these three things were revealed to me: the knowledge of the divine glory, the knowledge of the divine might, and the knowledge of the divine beauty. Then I saw something shimmering and moving, and it was conveyed to me. These things are going to take place. All that moves is from Him. The might and the high rank are from Him, and so is the beauty and the merit. This fire that I first saw in the sky is from Him, and now I see it as sparks of emerald and silver, blown and kindled. On the third day, these words descended on her heart. We have given you the knowledge of past and future. She remained in this state for some time, and then the knowledge of the names of God was revealed to her. Each day, new names were opened up to her, and the glowing light was upon her heart, and the inward meaning of the names was revealed to her. This lasted for 10 days. On the 10th day, she came to me and said that the divine name, the Gracious, was revealed to her. And this is how this document ends, and also this talk.